wrong one. I haven't done this in forever. Nope, I fucked up. And I'm gonna die. Hello, everyone. Oh, hello, everyone, and welcome to Longer and Harder, the show on the internet where we take something and we go So I'm a little sick. And I'm sure this show, oh, goodness gracious, oh, goodness, I am absolutely certain that this show will go fantastic while I die. I already ran over my headphones. Everything's just set up perfectly. Everything's wonderful. Everything's great. Oh gosh. Okay. So yes, I'm a little sick. There's a tad bit, which has made mostly talking this week has been rough. So I'm gonna sound weird. There's not much I can do about that. I might occasionally die, and that's just how it's gonna have to be today. We're just gonna, on occasion, I'm gonna lower this just a tad bit, as I am more crunched up in my chair than usual. Unnecessary. Goodness, you're gonna make me laugh, and then I'm gonna die. And then you're going to make me laugh about the fact that I'm dying. And then it's just going to be this perpetual cycle of R&D dying. And it's going to be great. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to be a great show. I have absolutely nothing set up. Because I overslept. Because I'm a bum. So how is everyone? I haven't seen any of you in forever. It feels like it's been a very long time. Hello, Gio and Micro. Micro I saw last night, so he's fine. Hello, Jelly and Blue and Factard and Evan Williams. I hope you're all having yourselves a good amount of weekends. And that other thing that just happened, there was a holiday 3 days ago, something like that, and it was fantastic. It was great. I got my first battle scar for the season, so that was fun. Hey Red, how's it going? Oh goodness. So yeah, I got my first battle scar. If you can't, oh god, that is really bad. I never get, like, it's in a spot of my arm that I don't get to see it. But yeah, there you go. I burnt myself trying to move a hammer around in the oven. So I have a nice little burn there. That's nice. So yeah, it's that season again where we wage war on Christmas. So fuck yeah. That has begun now officially. I believe today is the official start date of the war on Christmas, if I remember things correctly. Which I really should have gotten water. I have beer, so we might get to beer quicker just because I need something to drink, and for no other reason. However, I forgot to make a little card for beer of the week, so we might just have to talk about it rather than anything else. Battle Scar trying to steal some valor there, yeah. Oh my gosh. Hey R&D, want to be jealous? I'm always jealous. I am constantly jealous. That's my mood. Hopefully Steambot will show up soon and we can move on with life too. Okay, so with that said, is there any housekeeping? Not really. Oh, that was the wrong button right there. Is there any housekeeping? Not really. It's been a bit of a it's close to the end of the semester, so I have like a billion projects to do, and I mean that like two. I have like 2 projects to do, so things are kind of like, weekends are kind of tough on me right now because I'm trying to be a responsible adult and work on. Do I have leftover tea? Sorry, no shit. There's no leftover tea. I was hoping there was some leftover tea, and then I would have something to drink. What are you? There's like so my desk is a mess. That's water. So I have like 2 projects left to do, 3 projects left to do. 3 projects left to do before the end of the semester that I still have to work on, which has been taking up a lot of my time. I gotta do a mock grant proposal for my animal behavior class, and then I think there's something else after that with that class. I still have a final test, and I still have a what's the other one? I have a research paper to write on something related to social psychology, which I've yet to pick a topic on. I was thinking something on social media because I spend way too much time on social media. So that would be fun. My parents are awesome and have an advent calendar, but instead of chocolate, it's beer. Oh, That is awesome. It gave you an advent calendar. That's a really good advent calendar. That's really neat. Less neat, but my wife did get one for tea not too long ago, which was pretty neat. Oh, I have Scotch chocolate. I have chocolate. I went to Denver last weekend. Was that last week? I was probably last week. I went to Denver. One, I have whiskey. Two, I have beer. Three, I have Scotch chocolate. There's this store that sold dark chocolate with like Scotch filling. It's really tasty. I love it. It's a Black Label, Johnny Walker Black Label for the filling. It's really cool. It's a very weird combination, but it works out really well. I also got a couple bottles of whiskey and lots of beer. Which is great. Not lots. Actually, I actually took it easy on the beer this time around. I have one from Woods Boss, something like that, Boss Wood, something around that sector. And then a couple more from Avery, which I think I'd had last year around this time. I think we did a couple beers of the week for Avery. And I still have a Boulevard, like giant thing of Boulevard beer that I got to get to. So there's lots of beer for hopefully when winter break comes around and I have more free time. But right now, we do not, because right now we should be working on our school projects, which I am not, like the idiot that I am. Okay, let's turn that back on. Okay, so yeah, that's more or less where housekeeping is at. I'm busy, like super busy. I'm like super busy all the time, which is no fun, no bueno. That's kind of housekeeping at the moment. Super busy R&D. I do have beer of the week, but I didn't make a card for it like a dumbass. So I'll show you the can instead, which is really what the beer of the week is. Oh, there is a description on the back of it, so we can read that. So this is Cornstalker. It's a dark wheat from Thunderhead Brewing Company, and that I think is in Kearney, Nebraska. They have a couple of tasting rooms in Omaha, and they're really good. They have one. Is it Kearney? Yeah, it is Kearney. They have a new one in Old Market in Omaha, which is fantastic because that's where all the cool kids hang out. So I get to hang out with all the cool kids. Okay, so it says the award-winning Thunderhead Brewing Company brings you the finest family of beers from the fertile plains of America. Craft brewed with premium natural ingredients. Oh, this is just for the thing. Oh, this isn't for the actual beer. That's sad. But it's dark. I accidentally had one yesterday. I think it was yesterday or the day before. So it's good, which I know is kind of defeats the purpose of beer of the week, but you know, you will have to ask Post about it. Oh, what exactly? How? Oh, yeah. I'm sure Micro's into some kinky nonsense. I could believe it. All right. So very nice and dark beer. I'm sure it smells delicious, but I have like no sense of smell. No, I have a sense of smell. It does not smell delicious. Probably because I have crap in my nose and crap in my throat. But it smells like a beer, so that's like some of it. But look at how dark that is. Look at how fantastically dark that is. Oh, that is amazingly dark beer. I want to say it smells good, but I can't smell it. So I'm sure that's like gonna influence whether I had it the other day, so I know it tastes good. Even if you can't smell it, it tastes good, is what I have found out. Okay, so let's give this a taste. Hopefully R&D doesn't like spill it all over the place. No, that tastes horrible. Probably because I can't taste anything. So this was a terrible idea. It doesn't taste very good. I can't taste anything though. So, I'm not even gonna give it a grade because I had it. I've had this beer before and it's really good. I enjoyed it the last time I had it, and I can't imagine that it's been a big difference. But I honestly can't taste it right now. So there's not much I can do about I can't actually give you an honest assessment of its goodness. No, and it tastes really bad. Probably because there's crap in my throat that's making it taste really bad. It does not taste good. But I'm sure it is good. If that makes sense. Don't do shows while you're sick. I know, it's because you're German. I went to the German restaurant, the bar, and I followed some of your recommendations. I had number Number 21, which I think is one that you recommend. It's really light. I like the flavor of it, but it was really light. I'm just, it's okay. Light beers are okay. I'm not gonna like bitch them out too much, but I do prefer dark beers. I'm much more of a dark beer kind of person. Yes, the flavor is beer is mostly aroma. That's true. Gotta check out the pictures. Yes, go check out the pictures. Okay, so with that said, I think we could move on to hopefully our video menu. I don't know where the bot is here. He hasn't been showing up, and I don't know why. He should be doing some things, so I don't know. Maybe I gotta like summon him or something. Let's see if we can do that. Let's see if we can summon him with a upside down eye. I don't remember what any of these are. Twitter, Patreon, Twitter. Let's try Twitter. If I can remember how to spell Twitter. So hopefully that'll summon Cloudbot, but if not, we will figure out a way to vote for things. Okay. Video menu for today. Took me a while to find one. I don't know where Cloudbot. Oh, Cloudbot's off. Ha! I saw the button, and I saw that I had him off. So that was an R&D problem. Hello, Mrs. Snarky. How are you? I'm trying not to like get super excited and make my voice squeak. This one took me a while to find everything I wanted to, but we got some good things I think going for today. We have The Truman Show by ODD TV, Alpha Males by Joe Rogan, Free Speech by Survival Life, it's not Thunberg, it's Thunberg? Thunberg. No, Tuba. It sounds like Tuba, right? Thunberg. Right? Is that right? Thunberg? Greta Thunberg by Rationality Rules. Watchmen by the Umbrella Guy. I don't know if that's actually his name. And 7-year-old Transitions by Blair White. And Noah's Flood by Genesis Apologetics. Alright. I need you to show up, Mr. Botman. Because you're kind of essential to me being able to. I mean, I can try to read the. I will lose track though because you all will spam, because it's what you do. So is he there? There he is. Okay, we're there. Okay, so with that said, there we go. Polling is now available. If you'd like to vote, do an upside down eye. Vote, then the number, and then you can vote for any of the other things on screen, depending on what you want to listen to. So yeah, Flat Earth Nonsense, I kind of kept that up. Alpha Males is about alpha males, and Joe Rogan being an idiot. Surprise, surprise. Free Speech is about SJWs. Greta Thunberg is rationality. From what I hear, he actually does. I am told, I haven't actually watched the whole thing because I try not to, but I'm told he goes into some racist nonsense, which, you know. Watchmen is people complaining about, what's his name? Is it Michael Moore? No, not Michael Moore. The writer, how Watchmen is too, like, anti-capitalism or some nonsense. 7-year-old Transitioning by Blair White. That one, there's things there, to be talked about. And that's changed when I first put it on here. There was some good news about that, and now it's terrible news. And so it's sad now. It used to be happy, now it's a sad topic to talk about. And then Noah's Flood is just about Noah's Flood, because why not? I got a video on Blair. I have a couple. I wanted to do one either on this or she did a video not too long ago about like how, is it Slate or Salon or somebody had an article that was titled like hundreds of trans individuals regret transitioning or something like that. It pretty much in the article it said like there isn't enough data to support this statement, and they were quoting somebody rather than like actually promoting the statement. And it was just Blair not knowing how to read, and it was kind of funny. Sky News, was it Sky News? Thank you. It was pretty much Blair just not knowing how to read, and that was real bad. 7-year-old Transition does not suggest transition with 7 years old. That's true. Do them both. Thank you. Yeah. So the 7-year-old Transition one's really sad. At this point, it's really sad. When I first put it on here, a court had decided that so the court had decided to give the mother of Luna, I believe that's her name, custody of this girl who is going. I think at the point was going through social transitioning, which is pretty much like she gets to she uses her preferred pronouns, which for Luna or she, and then she gets to wear like dresses or female clothing or not girl clothing, right? She's a girl. She gets to wear girls' clothing, and the court had decided that mom should get legal guardianship or whatever of her, and then that has changed recently, and the court overruled or made changed their mind, and now dad has it, and dad's a transphobic asshole. So this poor 7-year-old girl is now stuck with a dad who doesn't like the fact that she's trans. So Luna isn't a pronoun. That's a name, I know. So it's been so now it's sad. It was happy, now it's sad because now this poor girl has to live with dad who thinks that I think dad is super Christian too. So probably I think dad like has some really really unhealthy views about his own daughter. So sad times there. So yeah. The flood one was, I don't know. I just kind of was looking around and I found like it's like seven myths about the flood. And so I think they're trying to be like, these are 7 misconceptions that people have about the flood. But that's not actually what they do. So it's funny. Yeah. And then the Watchmen one is, I got it. I think that went along the lines of the what was the other one we recently talked about? The Batwoman one, where people are just like really upset because whatchamacallit, that it happened. Yeah, no, that is one of the myths. The people are just really upset that Watchmen is doing what Watchmen does and attacking the establishment, and so they're not happy about that, even though that's really what Watchmen is all about. But that's okay. I haven't seen this channel in a long time. Oh, well, welcome, Ninja Snapple. How are you? I hope you have a good weekend. Sorry about my voice. I am slightly sick. Well, I'm not even. I just have crap, and I don't know how to get rid of it. I tried Mucinex, or at least the cheap version of Mucinex that Target sells, and it didn't do anything. So that's a thing. So now I just sound awful for a little bit, and I don't feel bad, which is the shit. Like I don't actually like. I don't like I'm congested, obviously, but I don't actually feel bad. Like I don't have a fever or anything. I just can't talk. So I decided to do a show when I can't talk. Which has been going fantastic. I've only died once. Okay, you can no longer vote. Voting is now closed. Oh my goodness, I don't even have to press the button. That's a very obvious one. Number 7 wins Super Kid. People are upset that Watchmen is political, which is weird. It is very weird. So I don't know why eventually hopefully Cloudbot will say a thing. But number 7 wins like easily. Yeah, it's super weird. Like there's there's other other hand. There's other cat. Hello, other cat. Yeah, so there's a lot of weird it's like complaining that Captain America punched Nazis and therefore is, anti-Nazis. Like, yeah, I don't know. Like it's super weird. What was the thing? And we'll get to Noah's Flood here eventually. Probably not though, because I do like to delay videos. What was the one that I recently heard people were really upset about? Oh goodness. That I guess whoever owns Superman like doesn't know like how to tell a story about Superman, which is really funny because I think Superman right now could actually have like a genuinely good story about being different and being alienated, both literally and and metaphorically and all that, because he's an alien, an illegal one for that matter. And so there's probably some good stories to be told there, but people are not, people don't know what to do with it, which is a little sad. Okay, so when facts are now off Watchmen, Truman Show, Noah's Flood. Okay, so
myth number 5 is
stop. Okay, so we have ourselves turn that off, turn this on. Okay, I don't even know where things are anymore. Oh my goodness, there we go. Noah's Flood. So the full name of the video is Noah's Flood: History or Myth. I think it's so according to the video on YouTube, it was titled 7 Myths About Noah's Flood. But for whatever reason, the video starts at 5. I don't know where 6 and 7 are at. They're somewhere. Uh, uh, Anti-Nazi is very political. Anti-feminist is really neutral, though. I know, right? I just want to see a movie where illegal immigrants from Mexico must fight off attacking intergalactic invaders. Working title is Aliens versus Extraterrestrials. Ha! That would be good. That would be a good one. Takes a few. What was it? It takes a few days for the medication to work. Make sure you drink plenty of water because Mucinex will dehydrate. Does it take a couple? I didn't take it this morning because I was like, oh, it didn't do shit for me yesterday, so why would I take it this morning? So maybe I gotta go take more of it. Um, but mostly, like I said, I don't feel bad. I just sound like garbage. I just sound like absolute garbage all the time. That's it. Um, what are the expectation? What are you expecting to be able to count? I know, right? Count. It's difficult. Okay, so myth number 5 is where we're gonna start. Right here. And find out what are some of the myths about Noah's Ark besides the fact that it never happened. Well, no, that's not a myth. That's fact. The fact that it happened is a myth. It's a very fun myth. What was I? Who was I talking about this? Oh, this is what it, so I've been getting into a bit of a tussle with my coworkers because so for my class, my animal behavior class, we're talking about no, we're not talking about, I'm talking about writing a grant study to study superstitious behaviors in people. And when I say things like superstitious behaviors, it's got a very when I say it, at least, and when a lot of people in my field say superstitious behavior, it means a very specific thing, including I'm getting the definition wrong for sure, but it's like something around the lines of um, behaving in such a way as to think that your behaviors has a consequence when it doesn't, something like that, right? So you behave in a certain way thinking that your behavior actually makes a difference, but it doesn't. So that's more or less superstitious behavior. There's a really great study by Skinner, where he talks about where he pretty much takes a pigeon, sticks it in a box, a Skinner box, haha, and hey R&D, I want to say that I hate you. Nah, just kidding. I love you. Hey, nice to see you. It's okay. I'm actually surprised at how little hate I've been getting. So sticks it in a Skinner box, and then they put a button in the room, and then they dispense treats. But the treats are dispensed on a timer. So the button has absolutely nothing to do with the treats, and so you end up having these pigeons that do all sorts of funky things to try to get access to the food, and it's really funny. They like dance around and like peck multiple times. It's really neat, right? And they've actually done this with people too, and it's really funny. But people, when I say things like, "Oh, you have superstitious behavior," people think that it's like a supernatural thing. At least it can be, but it's not from my perspective. And so I've been getting into a bit of a tuffle with people at work because I keep saying that we're all superstitious, and they're like, "I don't believe in what else? What are you talking about?" It's like, no, we do silly things. There was a point to that tangent. I don't remember what it was. So yeah, so we'll go back to it. I'm pretty sure that the Skinner box is one of the torture instruments we saw at the Torture Museum in Potencia. It's actually it's so there's a fun story about Skinner boxes. Is one, they're not really real, which is kind of the funny part, right? Like they are real, so there's this myth. Speaking of myths, there's this myth about Skinner boxes that Skinner wanted to raise his daughter inside of a Skinner box to like show that they could manipulate all sorts of behaviors and whatnot. That's a lie. And there's a picture of Skinner's daughter inside of a Skinner box. And then people use that to show how evil Skinner was. I'm sure Skinner did some evil shit, but that's definitely not one of them. People do all sorts of things. Put a rag underneath the mic. I need to do something. I'm sorry. Like, this is just shit from my mouth. It's not, I can't like fix this anymore. Hello, Bull. How are you? It's like wiggling the stick while trying to catch it. Exactly. It's exactly like that. It does nothing. It's great. Okay. Oh, goodness. I'm going to die. I'm sorry, but I'm going to die. Okay. So, with that said, how do we talk shock shit? Don't blame your sickness on I know. Okay. So myth 5. What is myth 5? I don't know what myth 5 is. Let's find out what myth 5
The
is.
Bible's account of Noah's flood is just myth and was drawn from writings from the ancient Near East. To investigate this claim,
I mean, yes. I'm not sure how that's a myth. So yeah, as far as I know, there's absolutely no behavior is kind of awful, but we learned a lot from the phase of psychology and study. It's true. Behavioralism. So like okay. So the thing about behavioralism is like every other science, it does awful shit or has done awful shit, right? Like in the same way that medicine has done awful shit as well. Um, um, but we get like good results out of it. Oh, there's some famous. I think it's a tuberculosis. No, it's an STD. There's some STD, and there was a study. This is a God, and I should know this because it's a big ethical case that people should know about if they do human research. Where they were studying some sort of STD, and so in order to study STDs, they were pretty much give. Science doesn't do awful things. Point taken. You know, God, I'm gonna have to. I am terrible at remembering these things. But in order to study STD, syphilis. Thank you. It was syphilis. It's always syphilis. In order to study syphilis, they pretty much gave like, if I remember right, and I could be wrong, I could be off. They like refused to give. They gave fake cures, placebos, to a group of African Americans, and they use African Americans because using minorities is part of being awful. Um, um, they gave it to a group of African Americans, this placebo for syphilis, and then gave the real one to some, and then told them that they were cured, and so they went out and spread more syphilis. And this is a classic case of like being excruciatingly immoral. Of course, we learned a whole lot of things about. Please don't say study. That was not a study. We learned nothing from it. There you go. So like people do awful things in the name of science, which is probably the better way of putting it. Like. And behaviorism is the same way. There are plenty of extremely morally objectionable things that behaviorism have done. Because it's humans, and humans are awful and they do awful things. But that's not to be blamed on the science itself. The science itself doesn't tell you what you should or shouldn't do. It describes things. It doesn't prescribe things. So, it's always syphilis. It is always syphilis. Okay. Nazis did awful things in the name of science, but they were not alone. Nope, they were certainly not. Okay. Okay, so, it's like calling, Mengele a scientist because he wrote things on a clipboard where he tortures it. Yeah. Um, um, so yeah. So that's the point. So yes, Skinner boxes are a thing, but they're not really a thing. There's a bit of a myth behind those. Behaviorists have done awful things. And I'm sure that as we move forward, that a lot of studies that are conducted now are going to be considered unethical in the future. As we get better at becoming more ethical human beings, or so I hope. But fixed, they would move people from the control group to the infected group if they got syphilis. Oh goodness. Uh, so yeah, so pretty much that's more or less. And I get into arguments with people, especially because my field is particularly, more not touchy. Like it is touchy. It's a touchy thing what I do, in my field of psychology, and so I do get into fights with people about this, because because behaviorism has done awful things in the past, and it's not like we deny it, right? Like we learn about this shit. Pretty much behaviorism 101 is learning about all the awful shit that behaviorism has done in the past, and then learning from your mistakes. So it's not like we pretend like this shit didn't happen or anything. It certainly did. And it's awful, and we're sorry for it. Like we don't we're trying not to do it again. But it would definitely. But people are very raw about it. Welcome to the club. My field was basically racism for a while. I mean, it's true, yeah. Um, and people still use science, and I'm putting science in a quote because it's not real science. But people use science to do awful things. Still, people. The incels are the ones that come to me about like forehead sizes and whatnot. Measuring skulls for whatever reason is always is always a way to group people differently. So people are still using science to be assholes. I guess if we want to talk about more modern things, and things that were phrenology. Phrenology is always fantastic. We still we I have talked about this to keep beating a dead horse, but using we have used science to to deny like marriage equality. We're now using it to deny safe equal rights to trans individuals. Um, People like Black Pigeon Speaks and racist assholes like that are still using science to do like the Great Replacement nonsense and whatnot. So it's gone away. And it'll be continue to be used forever. So are we still talking about? We stopped talking about the flood. I'm gonna go. Nobody ever claimed that chemistry is why blacks are worse. So, clean. There you go. Okay, yeah, flood thing. So yeah, flood didn't happen. As far as I know, there is no evidence for flood ever happening, ever happening. Because it would be a very, if I remember right, it should be a very obvious like mark in the geological column where a flood happened. It should be very clear, but such a thing does not exist. I'm gonna die.
We'll look at the global evidence for a worldwide flood, the seaworthiness of the ark, and answer tough questions like how could Noah fit all of the animals on the ark? Finally, we'll contrast the Bible's account of the flood with the leading flood myth from the ancient Near East, the Epic of Gilgamesh. First, let's take a quick look at
What? Okay, this does not answer the question about how this is not a myth, but okay, we got this. Racism really ruined talking about skulls. It really has. Yeah, if you ever want to separate people into different groups, just talk about skull sizes. That's like it. You're good. You got your science. Do it.
the evidence for the worldwide year-long flood of the Bible. The Bible records that the flood commenced by the fountains of the great deep breaking open that led to the entire globe being covered with water, with the highest hills even submerged by 20 feet. If this happened as described, it would have left some amazing scars on the earth.
You're right. It would have. You would have had one. In the geological column, you should be able to spot it like super quick. This giant spot where everything got mixed up together, and there should be a nice little spot there. Is this lunar bukkake? No. So that would be one thing. Excuse me. Oh, there we go. Some stuff moved around, so I can talk a little bit better. It would have also have left a lot of water on Earth, like too much water. Yeah. So that's one of the problems with this. Like, where did the water come from, and two, where did the water go? Like, it can't just not go anywhere afterwards. Especially if it's that high. Like, that's a lot of water. It's a whole lot of water that needs to go somewhere. And if it was there, where did the fuck the water go? Would be nice to talk about, or nice to know where the water went. It would have also have left a nice little fossil record of at least like everything, like just a whole pile of fossils, just like one layer. Well, at least ish, one layer of fossil-y things, or like everything kind of mixed together. It would have left a layer of that because everything got killed, right? It also brings up a whole lot of, like, there's so many goddamn questions about, like, why this isn't, like, this should be more obvious than creationists want it to be.
This is exactly what we find with the 40,000-mile oceanic rift system that covers the Earth 1.9 times over, including the massive 10,000-mile mid-Atlantic ridge that quite obviously shows how these continents were once joined together and then pushed apart. Just check out this map with all the ocean water removed. The deep continental shelves become visible, and we can see how the continents fit together like puzzle pieces to shape an Earth that used to be mostly a single landmass. This is especially...
I mean, yeah, that's geology. Okay, I don't know if I think you're trying to co-opt like legitimate geology into your nonsense. So yeah, Pangea was a thing. Nobody disputes that. So gosh, when did the flood happen? Because this would actually be very interesting. And maybe people who are better at math. When did the flood happen? So, I guess it doesn't really tell us how long. But in order for the continents to have moved that far apart within the last whatever 4,000, 6,000 years, it would happen sooner, right? If you're a creationist, you're a creationist. I wonder what the speed is that like the continents would actually have to shift, how fast it'd have to shift to be able to do that. That'd be kind of interesting. People with calculators and are better at math than I am, you should figure that out.
Obvious when looking at the matching jagged edges of lower South America and Africa.
4,000 years in the number I heard, but yeah, not even close to continental drift scales. So yeah, it'd have to move, right? It'd move real quick all of a sudden, and then it would have to stop, and you have to give a reason for why it stopped and has slowed down to whatever, because we're at a very slow speed right now. Like we are still drifting, but it's very slow. Why it has changed from going really fast to just like not really fast anymore. If the floodwater had lasted for a year, all the plant life would have died. Yep. Isn't it so fast that it would vaporize it? I would really like to know. I guess they don't really tell us, so it'd be hard to tell how fast. Like I guess you could say like it moved this fast in a year, right? And like it was Pangea before, and then afterwards it was split up. I don't know. Like I don't know what the time limit is for how quickly it actually changed. In a year, it'd still be pretty quick. We're reaching a few millimeters or centimeters per year, which is about as fast as a typical flat earther's neurons. There you go.
We can also see this notch of submerged land off the Grand Banks of Newfoundland and how it perfectly fits.
I'm sorry, what? Okay, buddy. All right, buddy. Calm down, buddy. You don't. Okay. Like one. So many things wrong. One, this is a flat map, so everything is gonna be off. But two, that is
Submerged
not.
land off the Grand Banks.
Look at that shit. That is not a perfect fit. Like I understand what you're trying to say. I really, really do. And you're probably not even wrong. But this is a terrible example. Like this is not like look at that. That is not.
Newfoundland.
That's not. Thing's fucking like 2 times bigger than that slot. Oh goodness. All right there, buddy. All right.
And how it perfectly fits
Hello,
into a...
Ian Turner. Welcome to being... Nobody ever subscribes during the stream, so I never get to see that I have Scott Pilgrim. Welcome, Ian Turner. I know you're not watching this, but hey.
slot north of Spain. These continents fit together so well because of the catastrophic linear rifting that occurred when the fountains of the Great Deep were pulled apart. The Hebrew term used for this is ba-ka, which means to cleave, rend, or break and rip open, to make a breach. This couldn't describe what we see any better.
Okay, we're talking about something that took tens of millions of years to go from Pangea today in about a year. So how fast is that? I mean, I guess you can measure like how big like is that the Atlantic, or how big the Atlantic Ocean is, or what the distance is between South America and Africa, and then divided by years and all that, and you could get a speed. I still feels like it should be ridiculously fast, especially for continents. I want to say probably in the hundreds, if not 10, hundreds of miles per hour, probably. I want to say, but I don't really know. I don't really know how it's about 100 kilometers per week. Ooh. Catastrophic linear rifting sounds like a kinky sex position. I do need Purple Dan.
One of the largest tears, the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, includes perpendicular faults along its entire length, showing the formation of new sea...
You know this person? They have micro in their name, so I assume you know these people. I remember that with the water, but I thought it was said to be plate tectonics.
Floor that occurred rapidly during the flood, not slowly over millions of years.
It's about 500 to 600 kilometers in 1 year. That would be around 1,100 kilometers per week. What is that in 1 miles? Because kilometers aren't real. And 2 in hours, because that's easier to understand because driving.
Raised and sloped features on each side of the rift also testify to the hot and buoyant rock that still lies beneath it. This is certainly something that happened quickly in the past and then slowed down greatly, as GPS measurements today indicate.
What? No. You'd have to give a reason why it would slow down. One. And like, so the only reason that you say that it fits is because you have like confirmation bias and you're like, oh, here's a thing that I can pretend like it fits, but just saying it doesn't actually make it work that way, right? Like there's no geologist who would agree with, at least no legitimate geologist who would agree with you on this stuff.
The evolutionary view holds that these continents moved apart slowly over millions of years. If this was true, the large rivers on the continents that straddle each sides of these rifts would have left a connected trail of mud stretching from one side of the Atlantic to the other. But what we...
I'm sorry, what? You would have left a... What? GPS measurements, excuse me, there was no GPS at the time of the... That's true, I didn't think of that. I'm gonna die. Don't make me laugh, guys. I'm gonna die if I laugh. Okay, so as what would I don't know. So I guess like rivers dump off sediment, right? As they're leaving behind. One, they drop off sediment. That's fine. We understand that, but that's also like very small amounts per year. Why would it why would it stick around? Like I feel like just going to a river, like where it feeds into the ocean, and you can see that, like, well, yeah, there's some sediment there. There's waves and oceans and things. Like, I'm pretty sure you couldn't even go like day to day and find the same sediment at the mouth of a river from one day to another. Oh my goodness. Okay. So we're gonna take a break so that I can go cough and die. But we'll be back in a little bit to talk more about Noah. everyone, and welcome back to the show. I didn't die, so good. I'm gonna follow Mrs. Snarky's advice, and we're going to, I forgot my beer, so we'll do that. But I'm gonna take more medicine, because Miss Snarky says that it's good for me. So I wanted you to see this gigantic thing. Like, look at this shit. It's huge. It's no bueno. But we're gonna try not to die. I have a little bit of beer left. I'm gonna go through that beer, and then drink this whole thing of water, and then just keep talking about the flood and things and stuff.
See from the evidence is that they were rapidly split apart, and then the draining and erosion started. Major rivers like the Congo, Mississippi, and Amazon run off the continents and have mud fans with only thousands of years worth of mud deposits, not millions. Also, there are flat sand bottoms on each side of these continents, showing they were split apart rapidly. They don't have millions of years worth of runoff with extensive mud extending out into the ocean.
Okay, what? Okay, what? What? No. So here's the thing. One, if you are correct, right, and the thing that you showed back here, right? Where did you show it? Where did you, that? If that, let's one for a second. That's what did you say that was the Amazon River? Is that what you said? Like an idiot?
Run off the continents and have mud fans with only thousands of Amazon rivers like the Congo,
Mississippi's in here somewhere, I'm assuming.
Mississippi and Amazon run off the continents and have mud fans with only thousands of years worth of mud deposits.
Okay, if we're gonna pretend, like this is that's what that is, right? Like somehow, that's what that is. Is that those are fucking mud deposits and sediment deposits? That's not what they are. Let's pretend that that's true. How come we don't see them everywhere? Like, I'm actually really curious, because you're like cherry picking things, like you're cherry picking that, like, sometimes they show up, but sometimes they do. If you're right, and this all happened really quick, then none of them should show up. Like, you shouldn't see any of these mud veins or mud whatever the fuck you call them at all. They shouldn't exist, but yet they do, which makes me think that maybe something else might be happening. Especially following your next comment about there being like a sand ledge or whatever the fuck you call it.
Not millions. Also, there are flat sand bottoms on
sand bottoms. That there are flat sand bottoms. They should be like, okay. You can only have one. If you're gonna have this weird theory that that mud should leave a residue, then you should only have one of these two things happening. You can't have both. I think you don't know what those little scar things are, and so you're calling them mud drifts or whatever you call them. That's, God, I wish I had a biologist. It's pretty much probably not what that is. Continental shelf, they are mud.
On each side of these continents, showing they were split apart rapidly. They don't have millions of years worth of runoff with extensive mud extending out into the ocean. These rivers began shaping and eroding only thousands of years ago, not millions. The fossil record that now straddles both sides of this global tear testifies to the rapid nature of this catastrophe, with millions of the same kinds of animals that were once living together now found buried in mud layers on either side. Global.
I'd have to look into that. What could have happened, is that, I mean, if you had a one continent, right? They were all living together in that one area, and then they all went extinct, and then the continents split apart afterwards, right? You're sort of assuming that it all happened at the same time, and you have no real reason to say that, except the fact that you have this Noah's flood. The animals could have gone extinct and fossilized in this area, and then everything split apart afterwards. There's no reason for for the flood to be the reason they went extinct. That's just you assuming that or just making that as a claim.
Geology joins this testimony with recent analysis of 1,800 boreholes from around the world, revealing 6 mega sequences of the flood that indicate its worldwide extent. Billions of fossils buried in the mud around the world, including 13 states of dead dinosaurs mixed with marine life in the middle of America. What type of flood could do this?
Okay, again, you don't really understand. Like, you're just putting, like, you're taking geology evidence for a things changing slowly over time, and you're saying no, it must have happened quickly. And the only reason is saying it must be happened quickly is the fact that you want to believe in a flood, and that's it. Like, that's really it. There's no the evidence itself doesn't actually point to a flood. You see a flood, and then you're trying to find evidence to back up why you think there was a flood. You're doing it backwards.
Just how much water would it take to bury millions of land creatures under hundreds of feet of mud in this 13-state, 700,000 square mile area? And just how did so many land creatures get buried together with marine life, with 97% of the dinosaurs found disarticulated? And many of the remaining 3% that are found intact discovered in mud layers with their necks arched back, suffocating as they died.
I'm sorry, what? Okay, no. Okay, don't make me laugh. Do I have a dinosaur? I don't think I have a dinosaur. I have a thing. Okay. You're holding the picture vertically, right? But these weren't found vertically. They were. Oh my god. They were found flat, and then they flip them vertically. That's how you're showing your picture. Oh my goodness. The marine life and the dinosaurs aren't the same layer, you dipshit.
Catastrophic plate tectonics explains the mechanism behind the Genesis flood, with massive oceanic plates subducting under the land masses, generating cycles of tsunamis that brought megatons of sediment onto land, wiping out every living creature in their paths, burying them in the muddy layers we can still see today. These types of tsunamis still occur, although much less frequently and on a smaller scale. The spreading seafloor subducts, binds under the land masses, and then releases, creating mud-filled tsunamis that carry debris and sea life onto land, sorting them in layers. This is exactly what we see in dinosaur graveyards today around the world. North America.
No, this is not. Okay, you need to stop. This is not actually what we see. Like, we do see that you find, like, ocean animals in the middle of the U.S., right? What you don't see is like, ocean animals and dinosaurs on the same layer. You seem to be forgetting, like, you seem to think that just because they're found in the same general area that they are buried at the same layer. That's not how burying works. It's not how fossils work. Fossils work in layers. So, fossil dies, animal dies, covered, fossilized. Animal dies, I don't know, imagine another animal. Animal dies, gets covered in dirt, another fossil. That's how it works. So, even though they might be found within the same area, that doesn't mean they're found in the same layer, and it doesn't mean that they died at the same time. You're making a whole lot of assumptions here just to try to fit your little narrative. Yes, there are layers. A flood would result in a single layer. Yeah. So if it happened the way that you want it to happen, you would have whatever trilobite, dinosaur together, then layer of mud, and it'd all be mixed together. But that's not what you see. You see whatever trilobite, dinosaur, layer. And you seem to kind of be ignoring that little fact. You seem to be ignoring the fact that geology happens in layers and it's not just one giant mix-up of things.
America provides some clues to the massive nature of the flood. In fact, even secular geologists refer to what's known as the widespread late Cretaceous transgression, which is just technical jargon for worldwide flood.
No, it's
Studies have revealed that a sea level rise of 310 meters is required to flood the Cretaceous layers based on their current elevation. However, the maximum thickness of the fossil layers produced by a 310-meter sea level rise is only about 700 meters. The challenge is that in North America, nearly 50% of the Cretaceous layers contain strata thicker than 700 meters, indicating that the continents had to sink and buckle during this global inundation. This is exactly what the catastrophic nature...
You're not very good at this. I really do wish I had Purple Dan here, because Purple Dan could tell you more about geology and how you don't get it.
...of the flood would have done. There's just no way that rising sea levels alone can explain the fossil record in North America. Something much more catastrophic that warped and submerged the continents just had to be involved. Next,
Why? It happens upon a Megan Fox videos recently, not the actress. She's the height of stupidity when it comes to science. She don't believe dinosaurs existed, but the dragons did. That is not... Like, you really, what you were describing are things that did happen, right? Like Earth does bend is clearly right. But these are things that happen slowly over time. You are at this point attributing things, like you're pretending as if all of this happened quickly, and your only evidence for why it happened quickly is that your book says that it happened quickly. Not that the evidence points to it happening quickly, but your book says it is.
Investigate whether the ark was seaworthy. God gave certain dimensions to Noah for building the ark.
Wait, isn't... Okay. Just because I find this hilarious, I don't necessarily think it proves anything, but I find it hilarious. I think the ark, since you have the ark encounter here, the ark encounter, I think they had some flood damage at their reconstruction of the ark. I think that happened last year, when they had a little bit too much rain. They had some flood damage, which I find fucking hilarious as all hell. Look, a boat-shaped building, I know, right? Just because you can build a boat-shaped building, it must have been a real boat. But yeah, I think they had some flood damage, which is really funny.
300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. Using the Nipper cubit at 20.4 inches, this works out to a vessel about 510 feet long, 85 feet wide, and 51 feet high. Accounting for a 15% reduction in volume due to the hull curvature, the ark had about 1.88 million cubic feet of space, the equivalent of 450 semi-trailers of cargo space. Twice as long as a Boeing 747 and stretching over 1.5 football fields. This was a massive ship, but was such a vessel seaworthy?
The seaworthiness of it is kind of a silly thing to talk about. Could it actually, could it actually carry the amount of things it would need to carry? Because in order to house that many animals, God, you need way more space and a whole lot more facilities for, like, the amount of things you need to be able to maintain a animal population for a whole year, along with like the amount of food and water, the poop. God, you have to do something with all that poop. Animals poop a whole lot. You'd have to be able, like, the ship needs to be able to take care of that.
Interestingly, the ark's dimensions were about the same as modern shipping vessels, making a fitting shape for handling ocean swells that are typically spaced out in such a way that ships of this size fare well at sea. In fact, Dr. Xianwan Hong, who holds a PhD in applied mechanics from the University of Michigan, conducted a study on the seaworthiness of Noah's Ark at the world-class ship research center CRISO. Dr. Hong's team compared 12 different hull designs of various proportions and found that the Ark, based on the biblical dimensions, outperformed all others because it carefully balanced the conflicting requirements for stability, resistance to capsizing, passenger stability or seakeeping, and strength. The study also confirmed that the Ark could handle waves as high as 100 feet without capsizing. Noah was instructed by God to coat
All right, that's fine. I don't care. Still not big enough. Oh, yeah, I'm also dying again.
the inside and the outside of the ark with pitch, a thick, gooey substance secreted by trees as a means of protection against infection or insect attack. When heated into a liquid state and applied to ship planking, pitch hardens almost instantly into a protective, waterproof shell, very similar to how epoxy or fiberglass.
So how long oh god. So how long would it take to actually build this shit without like modern technology? Because like the Ark Encounter took a while to build, and they had like modern machines and suppliers for wood and all sorts of modern things that made it possible for them to build quickly. A group of 6 people building this shit, right? Was it 6 people? Was it 3? I don't remember. It wasn't very many. Building this shit without modern technology seems like a really, not just without modern technology, but like only 6 people trying to move a giant wooden beam and then pitching it into place is ridiculous. Like the reason that we can have that the ancient people had giant structures and whatnot is because they had a whole lot of people working together to get it done. When you only have 6 to try to get something this big, this large put together, that would be insane.
Glass are used in shipbuilding today. The strong outer shell provided by hardened pitch adds both strength and waterproofing beyond the natural capability of the wood. These divine shipbuilding instructions given to Noah certainly seem to make realistic sense. Next, let's look.
Okay. Not to break it to you, my friend, ships have been built way before Noah. Like, we have been doing ship things for a very long time. There's nothing divine about having a good idea on how to use a boat. Excuse me. Or how to build a boat. We have been knowing how to use a boat. Oh, there we go. Stuff's out of my way. You only had a sap isn't natural. It's divine. Sap is divine. He only had to bring land animals. He would actually have to bring fish and things. Because if I remember right, I don't think fish do very well not all fish do well in like cloudy water. And then the salinity of water would have been a giant mess and a half. That if you actually wanted fish and things to survive, you have to actually different fish and like different sea animals to be able to survive. You have to bring them on there because they would not have actually survived the conditions of the ocean afterwards. A lot of freshwater. There's no way freshwater fish could have lived in saltwater environments and vice versa.
At one of the most frequently asked questions about the ark. How could it fit all the animals?
Yeah.
Skeptics frequently scoff at the idea of packing all the animal species onto the ark, but the solution is found in this very objection. Noah didn't have to load all animal species on the ark. He only had to load the animal kinds. For example,
no. I get the feeling we're not going to define kind, so that's going to be a thing. I really want to know what number they get to, because it's still a whole lot. Like, even if you get down to kinds, whatever the fuck that means, you're still going to have to pack a whole lot of animals into one place. Both salt and freshwater animals tend to die in flash floods, yeah.
there are over 300 dog breeds and over 300 horse breeds.
Again, so as Micro has pointed out, these aren't different species, right? Like, these aren't different species of horse. They are the same species of horse. They are different breeds. You got that right. But the species and breed are not the same thing, my friend.
And all breeds within these two animal kinds are interfertile, producing offspring representing a mix in between the two parents. The same is true for many other animal groups. Collapsing these animal trees results in a very feasible number of animal kinds, less than a few thousand, that could board the ark, get off a year later, and then spread around the world and reproduce into the varieties within kinds we see today.
Okay. So let's pretend a few thousand is still a lot. It's way too much. God, a few like even a couple thousand, right? Even taking care of a couple thousand animals. One, fitting them all. Fitting them all is still a struggle. Like you're still talking about trying to fit a whole lot of things into what is basically a football field with a couple of different stories, right? A couple of and you seem to have some fairly big animals. You seem to have some dinosaurs in there too. I guess there's like Triceratops kind and nothing else, which is fun. Like some of those fuckers are pretty big. Same thing with other bigger animals, elephants and giraffes and whatnots. They still take up like even a couple thousand animals still take up quite a bit of room. And then on top of it, the fun thing is you'd have to be able to take care of them, and you have to be able to have enough. The thing that's always gets forgotten is you have to have enough food for a couple of thousand animals for a year, because it's not like you're gonna get more food in that year, right? You're not gonna stop at the nearest harbor and refill. So whatever food, which for a lot of these animals is gonna be like, good luck feeding the tiger grains, right? You're gonna have fresh, once a month. You're gonna have some fresh meat for that tiger and that lion, or the tiger lion kind of, whatever the fuck you want to call it, right? So you have to have food for all these animals, some of which have rather specific diets. You're gonna have to have enough food for all the animals, plus water, because as we've been talking about, the water that's in the ocean, one, is probably going to be salty because ocean water. So you really can't use that. So you need a whole lot more things than just fitting the animals is a problem zone. Fitting all the things that you need for animals is a whole other problem that you're probably not going to talk about. The other fun things, so there's this really fun things with was it cheetahs? So cheetahs, we can actually see like that there's a bottleneck in cheetahs. Not too long ago, I think it's millions, a couple of millions of years ago, there's a bottleneck in cheetahs where like all their DNA kind of like gets compressed into, there's a little DNA bottleneck a couple of million years ago for cheetahs, and we can actually see that, like we can actually study that and see that that happened a couple million years ago. So if this were true, what we should see something similar with pretty much every species, that every species gets bottlenecked at some point or another, rather than so like we should see trees like you have here, rather than seeing the ones evolutionary trees like we see them now. We should see them like you, where we should see everything bottleneck at one kind, and then afterwards, but we don't actually see that.
Now let's compare the biblical flood to the leading flood myth, the Epic of Gilgamesh. In 1853, archaeologists found a series of 12 tablets dated to around 650 BC, although parts of the story existed in earlier fragmentary versions. Because the story had many of the same elements as the Genesis account, skeptics believed that Gilgamesh preceded the biblical account, negating the Genesis account as just a spin-off. Fortunately for Christians, however,
cheetahs are so genetically similar that they can do skin grafts between any two individuals without a skin being rejected. Yep. So cheetah. So every species should be like a cheetah, pretty much. So you see a lot of flood myths are actually relatively common. The story of Gilgamesh is one of the more famous ones, but flood myths are fairly common, especially in like places with oceans nearby. They have a lot of flood myths, because they have a lot of floods. I'm not sure that I agree with a lot of like Genesis stole everything from the tale of Gilgamesh or whatever. But myths kind of get recycled, so it makes sense that Genesis recycles some of the things.
However, there are major clues that point to the biblical account as the accurate one, and Gilgamesh as a later work of fiction that incorporated legendary elements of a flood within a cultural fantasy.
You, my friend. You, my friend.
Here are the reasons why. First, we have the feasibility of the Gilgamesh version of the Ark, described as a massive, unstable cube that was about 200 feet on each side with 6 decks that divided it into 7 parts. Along with help from the community and craftsmen, he supposedly built this vessel, which was over 3 times the size of the biblical Ark in
Oh, Gilgamesh. Yes. Oh, yeah. So I guess that is the part that I kind of forgot. Gilgamesh's story is also older, so that also suggests that things were borrowed, if not likely, definitely very, if not heavily, at least lightly, they were
just
borrowed.
a week. How would something like this fare during a catastrophic worldwide flood? It would obviously tumble, killing or maiming its passengers. That's obviously quite different than the biblical Ark, which had a 7-to-1 length-to-width ratio, which is very similar to many of today's ocean barges, making a feasible design for staying afloat during the flood. Scripture provides clues that Noah and helpers likely had between 55 and 75 years to build the Ark.
So, okay, at this point, we're testing the feasibility between two myths. I'm not about to argue, excuse me, I'm not about to argue that the Gilgamesh's story is somehow more realistic than the Bible. Like, I'm okay with saying they're both equally unrealistic and they're both myths and they're both fantasy. I have absolutely no problem with that. Excuse me. The Ark would break apart. You can't make a wooden ship that big, but you can make a metal one that big, and that is a thing. Says person on the video. So I'm gonna skip ahead in this because this is all kind of just gonna be like, sure, the story of Gilgamesh makes no sense, but that doesn't actually make yours make any more sense. Like, both of them make not sense because they're both fantasy. I'm not about to be like, oh no, my fantasy story is more realistic than your fantasy story. Like, that's dumb. It's dumb and I don't want to do it. So we're gonna skip ahead for a little bit. Oh look, there's a square box. That's kind of cool. What is this?
200 by 200 foot cube and 6 days for worldwide inundation.
Oh yeah, it took them less time to make this fantasy cube than the thing that yeah, no, that's fine. Okay, yes.
The edge of the boat like a raft, and moving to the riverbank like a raft. Centuries later, this gets exaggerated into a global worldwide flood, where humans killed in the flood fill the sea like a spawn of fish. Both accounts have a curator at Liberty Biblical Museum has to say about this topic.
What extra biblical text would you say substantiate the flood account in Genesis 6 through 9?
Well, let's work our way backwards. We can start
The only way to solve the puzzle is to wipe out all the life.
with all the church fathers. Every one of them mentioned the flood, and it's always a global flood. There's no example in any of them of a local flood.
Wait, what? Go back. What stupid thing did you say?
Liberty Biblical Museum has to say about this topic.
What extra biblical text would you say substantiate the flood account in Genesis 6 through 9?
Well, let's work our way backwards. We can start with all the church fathers.
Okay.
Every one of them mentioned the flood, and it's always a global flood. There's no example in any of them of a local flood.
So the church fathers who came way after the flood, they keep repeating that it was a global flood and don't say that it was a local flood. So the people who already buy into this say that it's a global flood, therefore it's true. Because you know who you can trust? The people who already believe in this shit. Like, they weren't around to have written that Noah's flood. Like, they didn't write it. They're just, all they're saying is this thing that I already believe in is true.
And then, as we move back to a first century writer like Flavius Josephus, who wrote for the Romans.
Again, not around, right? So the question was, what non-biblical sources do you have to show that this was a global flood, not a local flood? Even by young Earth creationist timelines, 100 AD or whatever, 37 AD, 100 AD, that's still 2,000 years later than when the flood happened, which means that this guy didn't actually see it, right? All he is doing is saying, this is what I've heard or this is what I've read, not I saw it or this is what the accounts say.
He's writing a history of the Jewish people, primarily to impress the Romans because they defeated the Jewish people. It makes them look greater if they defeated a great people. But he's going into the details, and he talks about that in this place where the ark landed, they call it Armenia, they say that there are people who show relics of the ark. There's at least 4 different accounts in Josephus where he says people chip off pieces of the bitumen and make amulets of it, or people are shown these things who are curious to see them, or that all the history of the barbarians, he says, he talks about Egyptian and Chaldean.
So yeah, so pretty much Josephus just, and I don't know what the credibility of Josephus is. So, but Josephus is pretty much saying people have said this thing. Like, again, wasn't there, doesn't actually have, like, here's a piece of the ark or anything. It's just, this is what people said.
Chaldean and Greek, all of these have similar accounts of the flood. And he said this was the same as the legislator Moses, he talks about, who wrote. Now we go back in time, and this are those barbarian accounts. We have Sumerian accounts, the Eridu, Genesis. We have the Enuma Elish. We have Atrahasis. We have the Gilgamesh epic. We now have the Simmons cuneiform tablet, or the Ark tablet.
Okay, so you're pretty much doing that thing where I said earlier that people write about floods, especially people who live near areas that flood. Just because you have a whole lot of people who talk about a common thing that happens around them doesn't mean that it was global, right?
And we have the Sumerian king list. All of these. Also,
and I'm really curious about how this would have worked, right? Well, how you have multiple reports of the flood that don't all come from the same story. So the point of independent research or independently verifying things independently is you have like multiple observers or multiple different cultures that talk about this thing that happened. So pretty much, like, how do I word this? If your story is correct, then you wouldn't have had multiple people to be able to write about this, right? You wouldn't have had multiple cultures that could have written about this because everyone was dead. I think you forgot that part where everyone died. So you couldn't have had different cultures all writing independently about this event because there weren't such things as multiple cultures because you say that everyone died. I'm really curious about how this is even considered independent observations of the same event when you wouldn't have had other people who would have been able to see it and or write about it. Because if that's what you're saying is, look, all these people independently talk about it, then you're pretty much saying that other cultures didn't die out with the flood.
Mention the flood and have various details. All of them talk about the gods punishing man and one man being chosen to bring either himself or his family or alternately, and certainly in every case, all the animals onto a vessel to survive this flood, this punishment. And then afterward, we have various details. He sent out a dove or a raven, which is like I mentioned in the biblical text. And almost all of them, when he gets off the ark, offers a sacrifice to please the gods. Well, this is not only in the same chronological order as you have in the Bible, but it's the same unique events and details that are in the Bible. Now, all these predate the Bible, and
that right there should tell you a whole lot. The fact that all of these predate the Bible should tell you that probably one, if not all of them, stole them from each other. And two, the fact that, like, the fact that there are multiple stories about flooding when flooding is something people have to deal with is not all that weird.
You could accuse the Bible of copying from them, but as we mentioned earlier, the problem is the Bible comes across more simple, more historical, more believable, while these are complex myths, and they differ among themselves in those details. But where they all agree is the similar core history that must have been passed on after the flood, and as civilization spread out and generations begin to go their own way, they develop their own myths, which keep that core common history but add to it in their own direction.
But you just you just said that predated. I'm dying. Okay, buddy, that's not how time works. You can't say that something that predates your book somehow is inspired back. Like, oh my goodness, buddy, Mr. Ugly Tie Man. If these stories predate the Bible, you can't say that the Bible inspired them, because they predate the Bible. They're they're written beforehand. Jesus fuck. The more believable thing is also really funny. It's not more believable. Trust me. They're all equally ridiculous.
The Bible doesn't do it that way. It's not a perception. They're saying this is the way it happened in an orderly event. And they don't do like these others. They give you clear genealogies. They give you historical time frames. They give you dimensions and structures that are quite literal and actually work. Okay? So when you look at some of the weird proportions and things of some of these ancient Near Eastern accounts, the ark is a square box that couldn't float. It's a round type of basket that might have done this. Or, they all have the idea of a boat, but they're too far from the information. Whereas the biblical account gives you exact dimensions of something that is high.
Okay, if we're gonna pretend for a second that having extra information somehow makes your story more true, you my friend are gonna have a whole lot of fun watching Star Trek. Like, you are gonna have just a whole lot of fun watching Star Trek. So Star Trek, it's obviously it's fantasy, right? So it's not, or it's science fiction. So it's not like scientifically accurate, but they go into a whole lot of detail to explain their sciencey bits. So if we're gonna pretend as if having more details somehow makes something more true, then you are going to have to admit that all the things that happen or will happen in Star Trek are true, because it has a whole lot of details, right? It's not just random, these weird shaped things. It's got details and stuff. And that's a little stupid. He's not saying the Bible inspired him. He's saying that both were based on actual historical events. I know what he's trying to say, but the fact that that the ones that, like, so that would make sense if the Bible were like the older one. If like the story from Genesis was the older story, and then the stories that came afterwards, like the Epic of Gilgamesh and whatnot, that they came later. But the fact that they came in the opposite direction tells you something else.
Dynamically stable, that will fit what it claims. It's just not. It's no comparison when we come to those things.
Jesus taught about a real flood and compared it to what the end times will be like. Jesus warned, "But of that day and hour no one knows, not even the angels of heaven, but my Father only. But as the days of Noah were, so also will the coming of the Son of Man be. For as in the days before the flood, they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day that Noah entered the ark, and did not know until the flood came and took them all away. So also will the coming of the Son of Man be." Because Jesus stood firmly on the historicity of the flood and likened it to end times, the two go hand in hand. If the Genesis flood never happened, we have no foundation for believing in the rest of what Jesus said.
I mean, I can agree with you there. I have no problem with that. But that's not actual evidence. You're just saying, you're just saying that unless that unless you have the what is it, the Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, then you can't have the Chamber of Secrets. Therefore, everything in the Philosopher's Stone needs to be true. That's more or less your argument right now, buddy. Is you can't have the part 2 of the story unless you have part 1 of the story, but that's not actual evidence. That's just storytelling. Like, yeah, it wouldn't make any sense for Jesus to talk about a flood if the flood wasn't part of the story. Yeah, it wouldn't make any sense.
including his second coming. At least for Christians, Matthew alone should destroy the flood as myth idea. Looking back through history, there are actually hundreds of flood accounts, and the similarity between these accounts and the Genesis flood are uncanny. Most of them seem to draw from the same common themes: judgment from God, a family chosen to preserve humanity.
We're back at repeating things. Yeah, they're common. Again, flood stories are common. Lots of stories are common. It's fine. That's not actual evidence. That's just laziness and humans' ability to write stories. God, there's a book that talks about like how many different kinds of stories there are in English language. There's like 49 or something. It's not very many, because you can only tell a story so many ways. So that doesn't, you're just kind of at the repeating yourself point of the video, buddy.
And loading animals. The early Chinese certainly seemed to have Genesis and the flood in mind when they invented written language.
Together with the Jews, Chinese is one of the earliest and the oldest enduring
There probably was a flood somewhere sometime. There's a flood now too. It's true.
civilization.
I'm sure that, yeah, there's floods happen. Like, I don't know why this is so, like, you're so, baffled by the fact that floods happen.
It has a 4,500 years of unbroken history. Every Chinese word not only expresses a meaning, it captures a history. Every character tells a story. And that the Chinese people were the descendants of the Tower of Babel. They were the descendants of Noah. Surely they want to record all these global cataclysmic events. So I'm going to show you that all these global events were documented in Chinese history. Now notice, watch everybody.
每一个人仔细看啊，
God took clay to,
神拿了尘土起来，
he breathed with his mouth
用口吹气进去，
on two people. One is a man,
两个人身上，一个是一个人呐、男人，
out of his side came forth a woman.
从他身旁出来了女人。
I don't know Chinese. This makes no sense. By this logic, every story with New York in it is true. It's true, right? One of my favorite ones about New York, not story about New York. I don't speak Chinese. I'm assuming this seems like the thing you do numerology. It seems a whole lot like numerology. Like you take a bunch of things that kind of look similar or look familiar, and you find patterns that you think are there, even if they're not there. Letterology, I like that one. Yeah, so this is just letterology. It's just numerology, but with letters instead. Also, if you want to show the history, you could have shown the history, right? Like, if we're gonna go with Chinese history is is unbroken for 4,500 years or whatever you said earlier, then show us the historical documents that talk about this giant flood, right? Like if it's been unbroken, then you should be able to find those historical documents. The fact that it doesn't appear, and it seems like China just kind of like nobody talked about the flood that had just happened that year in any of their recordings kind of tells you something. There's also lots of other cultures that have an unbroken history around the time that it's predicted the flood happened, where just like nothing happened, and nobody seems to have gotten any like story or anything related to the flood, and just histories of people seem to exist unbroken. Hello, Insider, how are you? Oh, the New York thing. Yeah, one of my favorite ones about New York is so there's a Spider-Man comic that came out in 2002, 2003, I forget, I think it was 2002 or 2001, where it's Spider-Man and like a bunch of the other Marvel heroes who all participate in rescue efforts at 9/11, and so they're all there, like, you know, looking for survivors and whatnots and all that jazz. So according to this guy, because, you know, what took place in New York, which is a real city, and it's got a whole lot of similarities between events that really happened, then Spider-Man must be true, and Captain America and you know, all the other characters. It must all be true because, I mean, it's got so many similarities, and similarities at all that matter. Kind of like Egypt never talks about Jewish slaves or the sea devouring their army. It's true. Like, imagine, like, if these things had actually happened, you'd figure that people would have recorded them. A criminal often returns to the cream of the sighing. Spider-Man did 9/11. Oh no, probably.
And put them in a garden.
把它们放在这个范围里。
That's how you got the word garden. And the Lord God commanded the man, saying, Of every tree of the garden you may freely eat, but the tree of knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat, for in the day that you eat of it you shall surely die. So God stopped them,
神拦阻他们，
prohibited them.
禁止他们。
Now, to forbid in Chinese is this word 禁. Now,
This is this is wordology. It doesn't really tell you anything. Spider said can't melt beams. It's true. We're gonna skip ahead again because letterology. Letterology is kind of useless when I don't speak the language. So I mean, they might be accurate, they might not. I don't know. Oh my goodness, there's a lot of letterology here. Alrighty, here we go. We're all done with this.
Also interesting that all human history disappears about the same time as the biblical flood.
It does? Oh, well, that's news to a whole lot of people whose history didn't disappear.
Even secular school textbooks admit this. This is exactly what we would expect with civilization starting again after the flood.
Really? Like that? This seems interesting. I am sure you have absolutely no historian that agrees with you.
In summary, the Bible clearly...
Oh, Jesus fuck, buddy. Buddy, you just spent like 10 minutes doing letterology, but when it comes to like this claim about history stopping when the flood happened, you just fucking move on. You're like, yeah, history stopped. That's a thing. Kids' books say it. I'm gonna move on now. Oh my gosh. Just general secular, just kids' books. They say it, therefore it's true. Like, that's it.
lays out a flood account that, while miraculous, fits into history with much more believability than the mythical accounts. The Ark is the only vessel in the ancient flood accounts that could have actually survived the flood. It
I mean, except for the fact that it's made out of wood. No.
was seaworthy and watertight.
We have trees older than that. We do also. There's a couple of trees that are way older than the flood, which are really neat.
Dimensions of many similar ships today, and could certainly hold the thousands of animal kinds necessary to blossom into the variety of animal life we see today. The obvious scars around the world also coincide well with the Bible's account, matching both the mega sequences in the geologic record and the massive worldwide fossil record, consisting of billions upon billions of animals buried in the muddy catastrophe that killed them.
Well, that was that. We finished the video. We do have the dildos older than that, which is hilarious. We finished the video, everyone. Look at us doing a thing. We are fantastic. I nearly died only twice, so it was good. Yes, we all know the power, because you can compare, because size is all that matters. And if it's a boat or claims to be the same size as a metal boat, a wooden boat claims to be the same size as a metal boat, it all works out. It doesn't actually matter that, you know, you need different kind of structures and all that. No. All that matters is that they're roughly-ish the same size. All right. So we finished the video. I didn't die. However, I would like to take a break now because my throat hurts and I've been talking a lot. But as per usual, we are going to give ourselves some boosts for finishing things. Yay, we finished things. So I'll ask Google to pick a number for us, and then we'll be done for the day, which is great. We've done great. Hey Google, pick a number between 1 and 36. Oh no, I think one of the other Googles in my house picked a number. We're gonna roll a d20 because I'm too lazy to figure out why this one decided not to pick a number. Or maybe we can do it this way. Let's try this way. Pick a number between 1 and 36. There we go.
Here's a random number, 32.
32! We got there. Okay. So, with that said, we have, congratulations us. We did a thing. We finished the thing. We did fantastic. Look at us go. We have done a great job today. Thank you everyone for being here and dealing with my obnoxious voice. I'm sorry that I died so often. I know that it's obnoxious, but I appreciate everyone for being here anyway. Have yourselves a good rest of your week, and I will see you all next time.